In traditional fighting games, you can block an opponent's attack by holding away from them, like you can see on screen. However, blocking in this direction will still leave you vulnerable to attacks from behind you. So, to get around this mechanic, players use what's called a CrossUp, which is where you attack on the opposite side of the one your opponent is blocking on in order to trick them into blocking in the wrong direction. Generally speaking, the best CrossUps are often deliberately ambiguous so that the one blocking has trouble discerning which side the attack will hit at and ends up incorrectly thinking they'll block the incoming attack. But what about Smash? In every Smash game, players block by shielding, and shields block attacks from both sides. So CrossUps aren't really useful for Smash players, right? Actually, a CrossUp is still a fantastic offensive tool in neutral, and it's arguably one of the most underutilized techniques in lower level Smash, in my opinion. While it's true that players can block attacks from both sides in Smash, their ability to punish out of shield is often heavily dependent on the direction they're facing. This video will look to explore some of the most common ways that you can use CrossUps to improve your offensive shield pressure, and will help players better understand how to deal with CrossUps from a defensive perspective. While the footage will largely be from Melee, the majority of this information is applicable to all Smash games, so if you're a Smash 4 player, you'll still learn something useful if you watch this video. The most obvious and in some ways most useful application of CrossUps in Smash is to avoid your opponent's grab and shield grab in particular. Let's look at two scenarios. For the first scenario, we have Falco doing a high down air on shield, which leads to a shield grab as you can see here. But what would happen if Falco chose to do a CrossUp down air instead? In this scenario, Falco drifted past Marth to end up behind him, so when Marth attempts a shield grab, he's unable to successfully connect the attack and is now vulnerable to a punish, which is why Falco is able to get a forward smash. As you can see, just by slightly altering the position of Falco's attack, he's able to go from getting grabbed and potentially killed to getting a punish on his opponent. This kind of aerial cross-up is a universal way to beat shield grab across the entire cast. However, it's easiest to perform with characters that have stronger aerial mobility like Puff, Yoshi, and Captain Falcon, and more difficult with characters with limited aerial mobility like Ice Climbers or Luigi. If it's not already clear, the way to perform this kind of cross-up is to aerial with the control stick or the C stick while drifting behind your opponent with the control stick. While this drift input is tricky to learn at first, it's actually an extremely important skill to learn as it has many other applications, such as fadeback aerial shield pressure. However, cross-ups are far from immune to all out-of-shield punishes. Fox and Falco's Shine out of shield, for example, hits on both sides, as does up smash out of shield, up B out of shield, and aerials out of shield. However, in the majority of these cases, it's almost always better to be hit behind your opponent compared to in front of them. For example, if you cross up a Fox player's shield and he decides to go for up smash, you're much less likely to die because the hitbox of the back is much weaker. There are also plenty of cases where a punish that works when your opponent lands in front of you will not work when they land behind you. On top of this, if you think your opponent is going to attack rather than move out of shield or grab, you can counter this at low percent by crouch canceling after you cross up to punish. This creates another layer of mix-ups to your aerial cross-ups, making them even harder for your opponent to deal with. As an added bonus, if you're a spacey player, you'll often be able to connect Shine before they're even able to perform many of their out-of-shield options, assuming you did the aerial late on shield. This is also why cross-ups work well in conjunction with empty hops, which is when you trick your opponent by landing without an aerial and punishing afterwards. Because you're on the opposite side, it's harder to punish, which makes the empty hop safer than if you did it directly in front of them. While this doesn't make it safe by any means, it adds another layer of depth to this mix-up. As a side note, if you ever hear the phrase tomahawk, this is referring to empty hop. They're the same thing, but it's just a preference in terminology. I choose to use empty hop because it just is more straightforward and makes sense. Another interesting benefit of cross-ups is that they can sometimes make it more likely to shield poke your opponent. Whether your opponent is angling their shield or simply has a shield that's smaller than normal, attacking on the back end of the shield can result in shield pokes by hitting a point where the shield isn't covered. Being able to attack different positions on your opponent's shield is extremely useful and can net you a juicy punish if you execute correctly. There are also ways to cross up your opponent on the ground rather than in the air. The most straightforward example of this is wave dashing past a shielding opponent to grab them. This is especially useful for Luigi and Ice Climbers, which works out considering the aerial cross-up method I just showed you isn't as effective for those characters due to their slow aerial drift. For characters with faster run speeds, you can also perform a run cancel cross-up. Much like the wave dash method, rather than throwing out an aerial in your opponent's shield, here you run past your opponent's shield, cancel your run by crouching, and then turn around into a grab. For Fox and Falco players, you can actually wave dash through and use a Shine turnaround to get a Shine grab, which is something that Mango has used a lot more recently at Full Bloom 4. Ultimately, mixing in cross-ups into your play makes it less likely that your opponent will throw out shield grabs, which is something that's super useful no matter what level you're at, but it's especially useful at lower level where shield grabs are so common. From the defensive side, the way to counter CrossUps is pretty simple though. Generally speaking, CrossUps are a hard counter to shield grabbing, but they're far less effective against other out of shield techniques. By far the safest option is to wave dash out of shield or roll to reset the situation. However, if you do this too often, your opponent can predict your movement and punish it. Alternatively, you could attack before the CrossUp even occurs, if you know it's coming. So CrossUps are actually pretty easy to counter if you know they're coming, but if you don't, they're this extremely powerful tool that you can use in neutral, which is why it's so important to understand your options and then mix them up accordingly to keep yourself from being predictable. And that's it for this week's video. As a follow-up question for this week, I wanted to know if you guys would be at all interested in merch, like t-shirts and sweaters. I still haven't designed anything yet, but I wanted to see if people would be interested in buying that kind of thing if I made it. So let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode of Macro Melee, please consider subscribing and liking the video. You can also support me on Patreon. Even $1 a month goes a long way towards helping the project, so if you're interested, just follow the link on screen or in the video description. If you're interested in keeping up with the production process, you can also find me on Twitter @MichaelRadar. Finally, I'd like to give a shout out to Evan Oliver for helping me record clips, and to my Patreon supporters Joseph Escobar, Andy, Ryan Binstock, and Kyle Tang. One last thing before we go. The Falco player Ginger reached out to me to let you guys know that he's looking to make it into the next Smash Summit and needs your help. As the highest placing newcomer on the latest Melee It On Me rankings, Ginger's got a ton of potential and is really looking for an opportunity to grow and show off what Falco can do. So if you like what you're seeing on screen, click the link in the description to help him out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.